Master, level 3 upgrade. Hey guys, Tristan here, and today we have another upgrade for Master. This time around we have the Traxxas aluminum chassis plates for the Nitro Stampede. Now, if you guys should be well aware of the fact that Master's upper chassis plate is broken. These were donated to me by my good friend, Snake Killer, to replace them. Thanks a ton, man. Alright, let's first get this thing open, and all we have to do is pull a tab, super staples, and we do have to cut it. I don't have any scissors, so we shall rip. Alright, with the bag open, we can now take out the replacement chassis plates. And I gotta say, these things are looking beautiful. It's hard to imagine that the ones on Master used to be blue. They're brown right now. How that was achieved, I do not know. They might have sold it with brown, I don't know. But these are beautiful. I can't wait to get them installed. Let's put these off to the side and get working on that. Alright, let's start off by getting the exhaust system uninstalled. For all we have to do is pull the dual exhaust right on off the bracket. Then we can remove the silicone pipe off the exhaust manifold. Alright, next I'm going to remove the Easy Start wires. First I'm going to be removing the ground wire by unscrewing the one screw that holds it into the engine mount. Then I'm going to be removing the lead that goes into a glow plug, followed by the two connectors that connect into the motor right here. Alright, with all the Easy Start wires removed, now I'm going to remove the two screws that hold the Easy Start connector to the battery box. Alright, with those two screws removed, the mount comes right apart. First comes off this little plastic bracket, and then we can finally remove the connector for the Easy Start. Should easily come off, but if you may have to work it out. After that, we can just pull all the wires through the shock out from the shock tower and put it off to the side. Alright. Now I'm going to remove the last of the Easy Start system, and it's held on with 3 screws. Alright, with 3 screws removed, the Easy Start just comes right on off. Now just be aware of the one-way bearing that is inside the Easy Start system. Sometimes they'll say left on the engine spindle, or it'll come along with the Easy Start. If it comes along with all, you have to leave it there, but if it does get left on the shaft, just slide it in place in here so it doesn't get lost. Now we're going to remove the 3 remaining screws that hold the engine to the engine mount. As you can see, they're quite easily accessible. Before I can remove the engine, I still have to remove the fuel line that goes to the carburetor, as well as the pressure line that goes from the exhaust manifold to the gas tank. Alright. When you go to remove the engine, just be aware of the throttle linkage that goes to the carburetor. When you're removing the engine, you just gotta be aware of it and just move the engine around so it comes off the throttle linkage. Next, I'm going to remove the metal collar that goes on the end of the brake linkage, and it's held on with 1 grub screw. Next up, I'm going to reslide the battery box right on out. I'm going to take the batteries, slide them through this opening between the shock and the shock tower, so that the batteries are on the front end of the vehicle. This way, when I start taking the chassis plates off, there's nothing holding the back end to the front end. Alright, next up I'm going to remove the 4 screws that hold the rear suspension to the chassis, and it's held on with 4 screws, 2 on top and 2 on bottom. Alright, with 4 screws removed, the rear assembly comes right on off, and we can set it to the side. Next up I'm going to remove the 2 screws that hold the power switch to the upper chassis plate. With the 2 screws removed, you can now pull off this little plate for the switch, as well as pull out the switch in the box itself. Now I'm curious if this little switch can fit on a Rustler and Bandit chassis. I would test that on Drogan, but Drogan's not here right now, so I can't test that, but that's a good thing to try later. Next up, I'm going to remove the 4 screws that hold the upper chassis plate on the rest of the RC. They're located here and here. Now remember, each screw has a nut on the end of each one of them, so that you'll have to hold down when you go to unscrew it. Alright, with the 4 screws and nuts removed, the upper chassis plate comes right off, and now we can examine how it broke. Alright, from looking at how the piece is after 17 years, it has has worn. A lot of it's gone, and well, just one impact just broke along the weakened points. So, this was bound to happen, and yeah. The other thing that I've noticed wrong with this RC is yet another part I have to replace, and if you can clearly see it, the engine mount broke. Not just the piece that goes onto the engine itself, but the part that holds the whole RC together. Great. Here I thought it was going to be an easy thing, and I was wrong. Great. Oh well. From the looks of it, it's on this side, it's also worn, so it's either I'm going to have to upgrade to 2.5 here soon, or I'm going to have to look into getting a new engine mount set for the 0.15. I can't put in a 2.5 because they're just different sizes. It's really stupid. But yeah. Might as well just set these pieces off to the side. Is that loose on that side too? Alright, just get rid of the rest of the engine mount. It just slides right on off. And I'll clean this up and see if I can't fix it with whatever I have lying around, but what can I do? Alright, to remove the lower chassis plate, all we have to do is unscrew 6 screws, and they're all located here on the bottom. Alright, with those 6 screws removed, you can just work the chassis plate right on off and just slide it on out. There we go. And just be careful when you do unscrew 2 of the 6 screws, it will bring the tank out. But here we have the old chassis plate. Now this is kind of dirty, so I want to compare the old to the new, so I'm going to quickly clean this up. And here we have a nice clean lower chassis plate. It was really nasty as we saw, but now it looks a lot better being clean. I seriously need to go through this entire RC probably this weekend and do a thorough cleaning of the whole RC. A lot of water and everything. But here is the old chassis plate. You can see a bunch of areas where wear and vibration took place. It looks a lot better than what I have thought, so I'm going to hold on to this piece just as a spare. But I'm really happy now that I have the new ones. As you can see, the shape and design is pretty much identical. Well, it is identical. The only difference is the color. Now, I don't know if this was blue at a time or has been brown its entire life. I can't remember that far back, so I just can only assume that it's either was like this on day 1 or it deteriorated over time. That's all I can assume. I wasn't alive yet. Well, no, I was alive. I was just a baby. But let's now compare the old upper chassis plate to the new one, and if it's anything like the old one, the lower, they are exactly the same. It looks like it's either been worn down. My old one has been worn down in areas because, well, yeah, it looks like it's been worn down here, but this is going to look a lot better on this RC with the new blue ones. And I'm just going to be throwing away this old piece, and I'm going to hold on to the bottom deck just so I have a spare if the new one breaks. I don't think it will, but it's always nice to have a spare on hand. Alright, I cleaned the RC up best I can for now. I'm going to be probably taking this RC apart probably Saturday or Sunday of this weekend. Just get all cleaned up and looking good. But first off, you're going to take the gas tank that fell out when you were removing the lower chassis and just put it back into position. You don't want it to be just there. Next, you're going to take your new chassis, line up all the holes, just lift up the front skid plate and slide the new piece into position. Now it's going to be a little bit tight, but it'll fit there nice and snug. Now what you're going to do is you're going to re-screw in the 6 screws that we removed. Just remember that the 2 in the middle will be the ones that are holding the gas tank into position. Alright, with the 6 screws installed, we can now move on to putting the engine mount back in place. Now, like we saw before, the engine mount is, well, broken in half. I don't know how well this is going to work out from here on out for this engine mount, but if it's stable enough, I might be able to run the RC still. If not, well, it's either upgrade to 2.5 or get a new engine mount for 1.15. It's up, really, but all you gotta do is slide it into the grooves right here in the plate and then push it forward into the chassis. Now we can take the other half of what is supposed to be in one piece just slide it into position as well. Now we can install the upper chassis plate. Alright, to install the chassis plate, all we gotta do is slide it into position and then screw it down with 4 screws, 2 on this side and 2 down here by the engine mount, and they are all 4 are capped off with 1 nut. With the 4 screws installed, we can now move on to the power switch. Now it's as easy as it was taking off. First we have to get it into position, take our metal piece that goes over it, have it set like this to where the off is facing the back, lay it down in place, and then screw down the 2 screws that hold the switch in place. Alright, with the switch installed, we can now reinstall the rear assembly back onto the chassis. All we gotta do is take the rear assembly, lift the chassis up, set the chassis down on top of the rear assembly, then screw down 2 up top, and then 2 on bottom. Alright, with the 4 screws installed, the rear assembly is now attached to the chassis. Now before we continue, I want to remind that between the 2 screws for the skid plate, there is a hole. Now this hole is supposed to be a screw here that goes into one of the 2 holes for the front of the engine mount. Now this car didn't have one at the time, but now this RC has that screw. Now the engine mount is fully supported. Alright, next what we're going to do is we're going to take the batteries, we're going to slide them past the shock and the shock tower once again, and once we're done with that, we're going to take it, we're going to put it back into place, and take the battery box and slide it back into position. Alright, next up we are going to be reinstalling the engine onto the chassis. Now all we gotta do is make sure that the throttle arm goes into this hole right here on the carburetor, and then we're going to screw down 3 of the 4 screws. Alright, with the engine installed and the gear mesh set correctly, all next we can do is take the pressure line from the tank and plug it into the exhaust manifold right here, and then take the fuel line and then plug it in to the carburetor right here, just like that. Next up, we're going to reinstall all the parts that go into the brake linkage. First we have to take the little metal washer and slide it onto the rod. Then we take a small silicone pipe and slide it on there as well. And then it is followed by a metal collar that just rolls in and is held down on the very end of the linkage and is held down with one grub screw. Next up, we're going to reinstall the Easy Start motor and all of its parts. So all we gotta do is take it, make sure the one-way bearing is installed as it looks, with the printed facing towards the engine. Slide this onto the shaft, and then screw down the 3 screws that hold it in place. With the Easy Start motor installed, next step we're going to do is install the Easy Start wires and connector. First, what we're going to do is take all the wires and feed them through one of the holes in the shock tower. Alright, with all the wires through the shock tower, we can take our connector, slide it into the position on the battery box, and then take the little brace that holds it down and screw in the 2 screws that are located here and here. With the connector now secured properly, we can now put all the cables back into their appropriate spots. First off, I'm going to take the ground wire, put it over this brace here, and then take the screw that goes through this mount into here to hold this in place. Then I'm going to take the glow plug lead and I'm going to put it through the center of the heatsink and attach it at the top of the glow plug. Alright, with the glow plug lead and ground wire installed, we can now install the positive and negative wires for the motor. All you gotta do is take this little connector and slide it into position. And it's the same for the negative wire. Alright, lastly, all we have to do is take the silicone pipe, put it on the end of the exhaust manifold, put it into position where the end is coming out the center of the shock tower, and then take the plastic dual pipe, slide it through, and shimmy into position. And we are done. Here's before, and here is after, guys. Check it out. I gotta say, this is the nicest this RC has looked in a long time. I can't believe how well the skid plates actually, chassis plates actually look. I thought it'd be kind of an annoying blue look, but I gotta say, I am really liking that. I'm just overall happy that I no longer have to worry about a crack over there, but I gotta say, this is looking beautiful. I'm also happy I can start running this engine now. Now, if you guys noticed, I did show off the broken engine mount that recently discovered. Well, when I was putting it back together, I noticed that it's pretty stable. There's no movement or anything, so it's good for now. It obviously will need to get replaced in due time, but for now, it's pretty good. So I can still run it. Overall, I gotta say, thanks a ton, Snake, for this awesome upgrade. And that was Master's Level 3 upgrade.